Hello and welcome back to Medical Compliance with Clarissa. I'm Clarissa Benfield, our Global Director and Business Line Leader for our Medical and Laboratory Business at Intertech. And today I'm very excited to be joined by Dr. Eric Franca from the FDA. Hi, Eric. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
So for everyone who didn't get to see our webinar, which was super fun that we did together about the ASCA program, maybe you can just give a brief introduction to yourself, your position at the FDA, how you work in the ASCA program, just to kick us off.
Yeah, happy to do so. So hi, everybody. I'm Eric Franca. We have new acronyms, so I'm going to update those for everybody real quick. I am the assistant director in the Division for Standards and Conformity Assessment in the Center for Devices and Radiological Health. So that's DISCA and CDRH. And I am taking charge of the Conformity Assessment Program, which is ASCA and some other activities, anything related to that, and CDRH. So my background, I come to my current position from, I did a PhD, which I don't remember my dissertation title, so I'm going to go ahead and skip way over that, and jumped into a pre-market reviewer, a lead reviewer role at FDA in neurological devices, and then bounced around a little bit, but standards has kind of been a thread throughout my time here. It's been my vacation in my mind from my regular work duties, which was always nice to go on a standards trip or work on a standards document as opposed to pre-market reviews. So I finally found my way into the standards program, and now I'm taking charge of ASCA and all the stuff related to it. So that's more or less me.
Awesome. And I'm really excited to talk about some of the ASCA updates. Obviously, at Intertech, we are big supporters of the ASCA program. We've been involved with you guys since early on. And it's just such an exciting and unique opportunity for medical manufacturers. So I want to just kind of dive right in. We know the program was a pilot for quite some time. Now it has transitioned to a permanent program. Are there specific things that manufacturers, industry should be aware of with the transition from a pilot to a permanent? Has everything stayed pretty much the same? What are we looking at?
Yeah, don't call it a pilot. We're permanent now. We're here to stay. So we're a bad penny program, which means we're not going anywhere. So don't be afraid to use the ASCA program. If you're interested, if you've heard of it, feel free. You guys know, talk with Intertech and our other labs in the program to see how you can leverage some ASCA summary test reports to support pre-market submissions. But nothing has changed. We are working on updating our guidance documents. We'll talk about it later, I'm sure, but we're hosting an expansion workshop to talk about how can we improve ASCA, where can we go with ASCA, and how can we kind of get to a place where we can support other technical areas with the ASCA program. We're driving quality upstream, so we get kind of devices on the market as safe and effective devices on the market as quickly as we're able. So yeah.
Awesome. Nothing new, nothing major that anyone should be aware of. All the documentation will change to say just a program from a pilot. Everything's going forward and still voluntary, which I think, I always want to make sure when we have that discussion, right? Still voluntary, even though it's a permanent program now, still something that's a voluntary program for manufacturers.
All of kind of consensus standard use at CDRH is a voluntary effort. While it is strongly encouraged, it is voluntary. So you don't have to use this program. You could totally forget about us tomorrow. I don't encourage you to do that, but you can and be fine. You can submit pre-market submissions to FDA and it will get reviewed, given whatever you use to support it. We just think that leveraging ASCA is a better way of approaching pre-market submissions. But
yeah, absolutely. And so speaking on the standards a little bit, I know that currently, as of the end of last year, there were about 80 standards that were in the program for ASCA, right? 70-ish for basic safety and essential performance. And then 8 or 9 for route compatibility. So some standards are in the program. There's a few that aren't. Are any insights as to why some standards were included and maybe other standards were omitted or haven't been included in the program yet?
Yeah. So, that 80 standard number, I think it fluctuates a bit because we recognize and withdraw standards as they are updated. And, the old ones, we just say, we're kicking those out because they're way out of date now. So usually there's a transition period associated with that. But I think originally when the program, this was a little bit before my time. I mean, I was in the FDA, but I wasn't in the ASCA program because there wasn't one yet. When they were trying to stand up the program, what we kind of agreed to was like 5 standards. In the end, Scott Colburn was head of the standards program at the time. And we decided to kind of go big or go home and add a bunch from basic safety, basically try to do the entire family of basic safety standards and a number of biocompatibility methods. So I think originally we started small because we were going to do a pilot. We decided, why start small? We want to make sure we get stuff from people. We want to make sure people can use it. So we added a whole lot, but that's not to say we can't add more. And that's what we're going to be talking about in the future. Now that we're a permanent program, now we're like, okay, now where can we help going forward, so that anything's on the table for how ASCA can expand in the future. More biocompatibility test methods, sure, other technical areas potentially, and that runs the gamut from anything. We get a lot about AI now, even though there's not a great deal of standards on that, to cybersecurity, mechanical testing, in vitro devices, diagnostics, any number of things that could be integrated into ASCA. But all that's going to be talked about it's April 17th is our workshop day. I encourage anyone who's viewing this, if it's coming out in that period of time, to go ahead and go register. We should have extra slots. It'll be an open discussion about how to participate in ASCA, but also how it's been going, how we can do better, and where do we go next. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think, when we're talking about standards, right, I think maybe even manufacturers aren't aware of how broad the program really is. I mean, when you talk about thinking of starting with, 5 handful of standards and now having 80, I mean, that's really significant, right, in terms of the number of standards that apply to medical and laboratory equipment, collateral standards, part 2s. It really is quite encompassing. But for a manufacturer, right, we get this question sometimes: how can they confirm if the standard is in scope for ASCA, if it's part of a recognized standard program with you guys with the consensus? How does someone look that up or tell and make sure?
So yeah, there is the recognized standards database. Many manufacturers should hopefully be relatively familiar with it, where you can go to that site. It's kind of relatively easy to navigate in that there's a tick box for included in ASCA. You just tick that tick box, hit search, and the full list of standards will come up. Alternatively, you can go to the ASCA website. If you just do ASCA FDA, if you search that on your search engine of preference, it should turn up our website first, I hope. And there's also a link from there to our standards database, which should just result in just the ASCA standards currently. And that is updated, kind of, as we mentioned, as new versions are included in the program. Last year was a big year for the US adoption of 60601-1 and other big version updates that go through will be, it'll be present there. And you can kind of filter and search and see if it's partially recognized, completely recognized, what that means, and all the stuff that goes behind that. But that's where you can find the most up-to-date information.
Yeah, and you say fairly easy to use, but as someone who uses it often, I would say it's quite easy to use, right? To be able to look and confirm either via the ASCA pages or going directly to the recognized consensus standards pages. FDA does a great job keeping it up to date, seeing when standards are going to be withdrawn, which parts are recognized. Like it's pretty intuitive once you play around with it a little bit. So highly recommend that people go there. Also, the other place to check too, and we talk about this with manufacturers sometimes, is on like an HLA certificate, an ISO 17025 cert. We have our ASCA standards listed on there as well. So it makes it quite easy to find which standards are in the program and which site has which standards. So keeps it very straightforward for manufacturers.
Yeah, and our website does have the list of currently accredited testing labs. You can find generally what's in scope there. We're migrating to a new system that should be in parallel to the consensus standards database, which will have all the information about which standards, the extent of recognition, and also cross-linking between our consensus standards database. So hopefully it gets even easier to use, so you don't have to website hop. You can kind of both do it all at one spot. Yeah.
Yes, you guys are always evolving and making things easier and better and more efficient. So we appreciate that.
Trying. It's slow, but we're trying.
So with the standards too, right, we have a question that comes up from manufacturers as well as, what if 7 of my 8 standards are in the ASCA program or 6 of my 10? Are we eliminated from using the ASCA program? Can we not participate if not all of our standards are in the program? How does the FDA view that with a manufacturer maybe taking a piecemeal or multi-dimensional approach? You
can piecemeal it. Go for it. Like, it's totally fine. So, I mean, even if you just want to do it that way for any reason, not just because, the lab you're using only has EMC or doesn't have EMC. If you go to a lab that has all of it, you could choose to do some in ASCA and not do others for whatever reason. You can do that. Ultimately, what we expect on the FDA side, if you're a manufacturer, is you'll be submitting your pre-market submission will have a cover letter, mention ASCA in the cover letter, It helps us find it then as programmatically so we can make sure we're tracking when your submission comes in, make sure people are applying their review skills to the right place, specifically the ASCA summary test report for the applicable standards. And then you'd include that summary test report. And if you do a chop and change approach, that summary test report should say what is included in that summary. And often it'll say what isn't and where it may be found elsewhere if there's a different report number or whatever. That would also be attached to the pre-market submission for whatever testing was traditionally done, let's say, with declaring conformity to, let's say you didn't use ASCA for EMC. You'd say, okay, here's the general standard 60601-1 and any particulars, but then we did EMC over here in a full test report for FDA's review. I strongly encourage a manufacturer to consider not doing that and to fully utilize the ASCA program, because I've seen kind of how it's worked in that space. And the goal is to remove some of those triggering deficiencies that are often related to the methodology of how it's applied. And I don't want to review the pictures of the test setup and kind of figure out like that antenna looks askew and I need to ask this question now from an EMC perspective. And that means like, are you going to have to redo the testing or is there a reasonable explanation? Either way, you've got a question, you have to deal with it. I mean, that's a problem for everybody because we ask it and then we have to review the answer to it. And it's a time suck for manufacturers. It's a money suck for manufacturers and it's a time suck for reviewers. And no one really likes doing that. So we want a bunch of labs in the program that were confident in their methods. So I don't get the picture of the test setup. You just tell me what happened. And then I can ask technical questions based on that. You know, if something happens, then it may be mitigated with labeling or, you know, however it applies for a given device. So we're aiming to make the conformity assessment aspect of pre-market review much more straightforward. And that's the whole point. So I strongly encourage people to use that.
Well, and I want to note too, because obviously we were together just a few weeks ago in Washington, D.C. You gave a couple of sessions at the Amy Nexus conference on ASCA. And one of the things that you said, which I thought was just so poignant, right, is if the FDA receives something as part of a review, whether it's a full test report, additional information, that you guys are going to review it and review it thoroughly if it is provided to you. So no need to submit summary test reports and full test reports, defeating the purpose of ASCA, right? Because you will review anything that you receive.
Give us if you use ASCA and you got an extra report and it's a summary test report and it looks good to your eye, because look at anything a test lab gives you just to make sure that it's complete, because then you're going to turn around and give it to us. And if it's not complete, like they forgot to sign it, and we'll ask about it and just easy questions. But use ASCA because it should be much easier to review, and don't attach the full test reports because unless we explicitly ask for them after the fact, like there's key information we can find in the full test report. For biocompatibility, there's kind of more structured way for when this happens because there's a weird result and now we want to see all the details. But for basic safety, it's a little more wiggledy. If all the context and results are in the summary test report, a lot of the time the full test reports don't really add extra value. But if it's there, FDA might look at it and they'll see like a typo on a page, or, you know, I mean, we may find other things that are technically problematic, but really what we don't want to avoid, is confusion over some conflicting information on various pages or perceived conflict of information. So if it's there, FDA will look at it and just give us the summary test reports. Because
the great takeaway for manufacturers. I thought that was so great when you shared that at the conference, because I think sometimes people want to maybe be not overly informative, but right, oh, we have both of these sets of great reports that we've received. Here you go. We're going to put them in our submission. When not needed for that.
I get that instinct, but I would encourage you to avoid it, certainly in this case, just because we've had manufacturers provide it first in a file set. So then the reviewer will be halfway through the full report and then realize there's a summary report later and it's already too late. I'm halfway through.
At that point. Absolutely. Well, talking a little bit about the specific kind of test labs, right? So over 100 labs are participating in the program currently, which is super exciting, right? To think about over these past couple of years of how broad the ASCA program has gone. I think from looking at the annual report that you guys just put out, it was 15, 16 labs had actually tested products that were then, those summary reports were used as part of submission. So with the labs that we're seeing, are there plans to accredit more labs, to let more labs join the program? I know we have some manufacturer test labs that are in the program. Is there thoughts on that specifically to, how many test labs are allowed to be a part of the program? And if they're not actively testing and delivering ASCA test reports, are there plans to remove labs? How is that from your guys' point of view?
Yeah, I mean, there's no real limit here. Like, we want ASCA to be able to be applied broadly. So I think right now we have, like you mentioned, 100 something labs across the globe. So we have so many now that we're able to have a map with like stars on it, and it's like ASCA's here, which is nice. Yeah, there's no limit. So if there are new labs that want to come into the program, we're not limiting the total number that we're having in the program. Certainly not right now. And to the second question, we're not really planning to reduce the number of labs if they're not doing a lot of work. I think where some labs may struggle is promotion of the program in terms of, I mean, we struggle with it a little bit because it's hard to get people's interest on a new program. That maybe from a test lab's perspective, like, oh, you're paying a little bit extra for another report, but I've already got this other report and it's worked for us in the past. So why would we try something new? There's a million reasons why, but I think it's hard for test labs to kind of abstract the information. So what we're kind of offering to the ASCA labs in the program currently is, stuff like this. Like, let's open mode, let's talk about it. Like, happy to answer questions. The webinar we did together as well, just to get the word out there and kind of get interest in the program. And I think since we've become permanent, we've had an uptick in terms of people at least knowing that ASCA is an acronym that relates to testing laboratories. So they can kind of ask that first question, which is like, what is ASCA and can you sell it to me, or can we do it? And can I save time or effort? And how does that work? So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's exciting to see, just as you talk about, right, industry adoption, right? I mean, it takes a long time for people to understand if there's new requirements or new regulations or new things coming out, right? And so the more we can talk about it, share this information, answer all the questions, right? There's a lot of questions that come up with anything that's new, especially as it relates to this. And, I think it's the more we can do, the better to kind of get the information out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be clear, it's the FDA doesn't charge anything to leverage ASCA. Just go ahead, work with your test labs, get a summary test report, throw it in your pre-market submission, and reap the benefits of having ideally less deficiencies related to the testing that was done. That's really,
I think that's one of the greatest things that you guys did, right? That no one has to let you know ahead of time. They don't have to do anything, right? It's just at point of submission with that cover letter, then oh, they use the ASCA program.
Yeah, just let it. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. Like, we're relatively open book. We're not too scary to talk to. It's fine.
not scary at all. I think one thing too that people maybe don't have visibility into or don't understand if they're not on the test lab side like we are, is just how much effort goes in from your side to making sure that the labs are staying in ongoing compliance, all of the office hours that you host to talk about issues that are coming up, talking about any challenges that come up throughout the ASCA program. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that, because of course, we see it, you see it, but from a manufacturer's perspective, they may not know, what you guys are doing from the FDA side to really make sure that these labs are maintaining that high level of caliber to participate in the program.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've got our list of labs. Essentially, to get to where they are, you've gotten accreditation to ISO IEC 17025 through their accreditation body. They've got competency to the ASCA specifications that are drafted into our guidance documents. And then they've come to FDA with kind of a set of information or additional documents as needed for biocompatibility. There's a whole lot of extra reviewing going on because they're so method driven. We can drill down into the individual methods. So the labs that are on our ASCA accredited biocompatibility list are very high quality labs, and we intend to keep them that way. But how do we do that for basic safety and biocompatibility? Right now, we're doing test lab audits to make sure that the output of the labs are meeting our expectations. Of course, we're seeing the output of the labs when they come into pre-market submissions, which is great. And I think generally we've been seeing a high quality of reporting going on. such that we don't have to ask too many extra questions
Mhm.
or no extra questions, but just the questions that need to be asked, if at all. So if there's like a weird observation or degradation when you apply an EMC test like contact discharge or air discharge, whatever, you get something weird going on with the device, we might be like, okay, well, that happens, and then what? Like, is that clearly okay for the intended use of the device? Is it written in is there labeling mitigations to address it? Is it appropriate for whatever your device is intending to do? It gets to those questions, not the methodology, but the what happened and why, and is it okay? It's all that stuff that goes into it that makes the review a little bit easier when I have to skip the first half. I don't want to look at the methods. I just want to see what happened and ask kind of technical, public healthy questions about why that's okay for the given intended use. But
yeah. Wonderful. And you mentioned it briefly, but I just wanted to touch on it again as well. So we did see a big jump in the number of submissions that you received with ASCA from 2022, of course, into 2023. So what are the most common types of submissions that you guys are seeing that are utilizing ASCA or utilizing the ASCA summary test reports?
So I think the most common at the moment is 510Ks. So that's pre-market notifications. That's kind of the Me Too type of submission where something's legally marketed and we're saying we're substantially equivalent to that particular device that's already on the market. We're seeing ASCA reports a lot in those, but we have had a wide range of submissions. So we've had, I think, PMA, a lot of more than I would have expected IDEs uses. Those are the clinical trials, leveraging ASCA for kind of newer devices or newer models of devices. They're doing ASCA testing to support their pre-market clinical trial submission. And anything from Q-Sub saying we're intending to use ASCA for this, this, and this, and then even de novos, which are the kind of the lower risk PMA equivalent, where it's kind of like last two, like this is new intended use, something like that, new device, and using ASCA to support that. We've seen a number of submissions there as well.
Yeah, exciting to see right across adoption across all different types of submissions, and good for manufacturers to know that you really can utilize and leverage the program with any of those different types of submissions that you're making. Yeah,
I think the only main limit at the moment where you cannot leverage ASCA is in third-party review submissions, just because we have less control over what the third-party reviews do, and we're already talking about third-party assessments of things already, so we're kind of keeping it in-house for now in terms of the pre-market reviewing of these types of submissions. But that's the only limitation that we have at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. And then, what happens? Manufacturers ask this question sometimes, right? They submit their ASCA summary test reports as part of their 510K or another submission, and you have questions, either specifically about the test methods. Are you going directly back to the manufacturer? Do you come back to us as a test lab? What is kind of the process if there's something that comes up throughout that summary test report review?
So there's the process hasn't necessarily changed in terms of how pre-market review happens. It's just where we're directing the pre-market reviewers to go first. So the ASCA summary test report should be their first stop for looking at whatever safety, essential performance, biocompatibility testing that was done to support the pre-market submission. And once they get into that, if they generate questions, there really shouldn't be any on the methodology unless something really weird happened. Or was weirdly reported, which I don't think we have seen at all yet. But the questions that may be generated can many times won't be addressed by a full test report. You didn't define an essential performance for your device. Is that appropriate given the intended use, or are there actual essential performances here? Having a full test report doesn't help with that. So that's kind of like a half clinical, half engineering question that gets asked constantly and gets argued about between FDA staff and manufacturers. So we're kind of hoping that the ASCA accredited testing labs can help with that kind of question to kind of use engineering expertise internally for applying this concept to help them define their essential performances of their device. But there's no new kind of mechanism of communication. So the pre-market reviewers will send any questions to the manufacturer. That manufacturer can go back to the test lab. You can loop us into that conversation if you want us to. You can reach out and CC your pre-market reviewer. just to make sure that we're aware of things that are happening. We should be, just because we are doing outreach to the reviewers early on in the review cycle to make sure they know, like, hey, this is where to find your summary test report. We found it. And that's where you're going to start your review for this particular aspect of this pre-market submission. So don't look at those, if there's a full test report, just avert your eyes. It's fine. Look at this first. If we really have questions, then we can ask them or reference the full test report if it's there, but ideally that won't be the case.
Yeah, and I think that's just, you guys have made it so easy. It's such an easy process to kind of work and collaborate back and forth, which is, exciting to see for the manufacturers and for the test labs both. So it's great. Great.
Yeah, we try to keep that open line of communication with the test labs. I mean, we meet 4 times a year, plus we have open office hours for the basic safety labs where we can kind of talk about things we've been seeing or new guidance documents that come out, or just to make sure everyone's aware of stuff that's going on with FDA as it relates to this type of testing.
Yeah, and you tease it a little bit, but I want to give you a chance to talk about it just a little bit more with this upcoming April 17th, talking about expansion within the ASCA program. Maybe you can give just a little bit of information on how someone signs up, who would be the likely audience to want to join something like this, and what that's going to look like. Yeah,
absolutely. Anyone can come. Invite your family. It'll be great. No, so I'm sure we could put a link in wherever this is posted. Yeah. There is a registration page. You can go and register to attend. It's virtual, so anywhere, any time of day, feel free to register and join us on April 17th, where we are going to do kind of a general overview of how ASCA has been going. Which is kind of what we've been presenting this year in terms of, you saw it at Amy Nexus event, and updates from there, and then getting into discussion questions. So it's not just going to be me gabbing half the time. I don't want to do that. I want people to talk. So it's going to be kind of this Zoom type of environment where we will be talking about how has it gone so far? What's your experience been? Do you have suggestions for improvements? This is an open forum. Let's talk about it. And then getting into, are there new areas we should move into? Are there different ways we should be doing that? Like, are there existing schemes that we can kind of pull in and kind of apply? Like, we're collecting ideas. I'm not going to say we're crowdsourcing, but we're crowdsourcing a little bit. We get ideas from folks across the industry for different areas where you need to start moving into this space, in vitro diagnostics. You need to start considering more biocompatibility test methods, or we get a number of suggestions all the time, and this is going to be a formal open forum where we can actively talk about them and ideally have a discussion about it with all the stakeholders in the room. So I know a number of Intertech folks are joining, a lot of our other labs are joining, manufacturers are joining, and our accreditation bodies are even joining. So it should be an interesting discussion where everyone's in the same room, and hopefully we can kind of have a back and forth on any complicated questions or topics that may come up. But all of that will precipitate into, I think, maybe some kind of report or output of that where we will figure out where we go next. It's not going to be like, okay, we ticked the box, we talked about this, and now we're just going to keep doing what we're doing and never do anything else. There will be more. So that'll all be to come later this year, over the coming years, because none of this is easy to do in a short time frame, but it is the opening discussion that we're excited to have with everybody on the 17th.
Yeah, great opportunity for dialogue and to get in touch with you guys directly and really ask those questions. I mean, I think, again, we even saw that at the conference, right? People asking about cybersecurity, asking about AI, right? All of these things that are the future of the industry. So it'll be, I think, exciting to hear, more questions that come up from manufacturers directly as they're working through the program or thinking about using ASCA going forward for a future submission. So April 17th, we'll make sure to link it. Of course, it's going to be a good one. So you'll see lots of Intertech people joining that. Before we end, I mean, I could talk about ASCA all day. As I said when we started, right, we think it's just such a great program. Any other exciting updates or things you want to share about that are going on? I mean, you talked about your new acronyms in the beginning, but any other FDA updates or exciting things that we should point manufacturers to be aware of or looking at? I know we talk a lot about the guidance documents always coming out on, new topics and things that are relevant to industry, but yeah, anything else before we close?
Just acronyms. No, I love new acronyms. It's like our lifeblood here at the agency. No, I think other exciting things that'll be coming down the pike. We will have updates proposed to our guidance documents. So right now we have 3. There's the program guidance, the basic safety guidance, and the biocomp guidance for ASCA. All three of those are going through updates, and those should be published at some point this year. I say that without promising anything, but I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
But we will be publicizing that when they go out, because really we want everybody to go comment on it. That's how the program will improve. And this will be kind of one major update to the program. So when those come out, I'm really excited for that to happen, because I want all the comments. I want everybody to go in there. I want you to yell at us for doing something this way and propose something different. Totally fine. Like I want all those comments, because again, I'm not crowdsourcing, but we're crowdsourcing.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's how guidance works, right? So those guidances are coming out. But other than that, just a plug, use ASCA. You find ASCA accredited testing laboratories that you like, that have your standards of interest in their scope. Leverage the program, try it out. It should make life easier for you. It makes life easier for us. It's just less to read, if nothing else. That helps.
Well, and I know on your side, you've gotten lots of positive feedback from manufacturers who've gone through the program. We have gotten the same, right? Just in terms of how much faster their submissions have gone, what an easy process it has been to utilize the ASCA program. So there's a lot of good anecdotal industry feedback just on using the program as well. So really exciting to see.
No, absolutely. I'm looking forward for more people using it in the future. And
yes,
part of what we're doing now is going through a promotion cycle where it's like, okay, you may or may not have heard of this. If you haven't, you're hearing about it now, and we want to tell you more, that this is something you should be interested in and is worth your time.
Yeah, next year when we have this discussion, looking at 2024, we'll see even more submissions that are coming through utilizing ASCA, I'm sure.
I think so. We're seeing an upswing. Now that we've become permanent, we're starting to see like more submissions come in at a higher rate. So for better or for worse, we're getting more submissions coming, which is a good thing inherently.
Yeah, can only make it better, I'm sure. Well,
for sure, Eric, for our metrics and for the hopefully devices that get on the market that are safe and effective as quickly as possible. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Eric, this was so great. Thank you so much for joining today. Of course, if anyone has questions, they can reach out to me directly. Happy to get those answered. Bookmark the FDA's pages on ASCA, bookmark the guidance documents. They're a wealth of information. They can really help to answer any of those questions, and then be joining any of the virtual workshops that the FDA does. They're always really great opportunities to connect and learn more about ASCA and otherwise. So yeah, thank you so much. And thanks for joining, Eric.
Yeah, thank you, Clarissa. Appreciate it. This was fun.
Yeah, have a good day.
Yeah, you too.